Hello and welcome back. Thank you so much for your time. Today, we are looking at a developing story that really marks a turning point in the saga of the Sussexes. You know, a lot has been said about the battle between the brothers Prince William and Prince Harry. For years, we've watched the tit-for-tat, the books, the interviews. But what we are seeing now is something different. It's the moment the future king finally says, enough. The problem that you've now seen with Prince Harry over the last few days is clearly he's willing to go anywhere, right? And I don't mean that unkindly about the beautiful country that is Canada, but let's look at the reality of the situation. To turn up at an event and demand that you can't take pictures, you can't video, you can't have selfies, this is the level of incompetence now that Harry is working under. Think about it. He is trying to build a brand apparently where people will book him to talk. But talk about what? We saw him attempting to discuss housing. But let's be honest, he doesn't know anything about housing. There was a political background to that, but you get the picture. The reality is, Harry really trades on one thing and one thing only, his connection to the monarchy. And rightly so, it is his birthright. That is what he does. But there is a darker side to this trade. The other thing that he always manages to do, of course, is bring up his late mother, Princess Diana. Now, I want to be fair here. Some people might say it's an issue where he hasn't simply got over his mother. And who would? You know, you never would with somebody as iconic as that. It is a trauma that stays with you forever. But the question we have to ask is, do you really need to bring her up so publicly at every twist and turn? Seemingly, Harry wants to, and he does. He uses her legacy as a shield and a sales pitch. And this is normally very upsetting, as you can imagine, for Prince William, the Prince of Wales. Why? Because William handles his grief differently. Seemingly, he's obviously a little bit more reticent. You know, I see a fact that when you see him out and about in the public, you do see that he is warm and he's a friendly guy. But there's a barrier, and I think that barrier is right. It's dignified, because, you know, he doesn't want people getting him upset in the public domain. He doesn't want strangers coming up saying something like, "Oh, I knew your mother," or "I met your mother," in the wrong context. I can see there's a flicker there of pain, you know, because it's still very raw, and naturally it would be. Harry, on the other hand, has no problems in that arena. He invites it, he monetizes it. But now, it looks like William himself is about to slap down his younger brother over his aspirations to, as many people say, exploit his late mother even further. The gloves are off. We are moving from a period of silence to a period of legal strategy. William is no longer just the grieving brother. He is the Prince of Wales, the guardian of the legacy, and he is reportedly preparing a legal trap that Harry never saw coming. As ever, let me explain. Thank you for being here, Toms. Nice to see you. Now, let's get back to the core of this developing story, because this is where it becomes problematic for Harry. As I said at the start of the video, Harry has really got nothing left to trade on, except for that one thing: his past, his heritage, and of course, his late mother. Think about his trajectory recently. What new value has he truly brought to the table? None. The one thing you can ascertain from Harry is that he's not frightened to pull back and expose the monarchy. As I pointed out in a recent, lengthier video, he will bite the hand that fed him, all for the sake of the next big contract. Recently, he even got up at a talk in Los Angeles, the heart of Hollywood, and basically mocked the institution that gave him his title, his background, his entire being. He was heard saying, "Oh, you know, yes, it's like a high soap opera drama, and the other one's Downtown Abbey." Now, let's remember something very important about that comparison. This is the very Downtown Abbey where Lamarckle, his wife, was, according to many reports, desperate to get a part in. But clearly, nobody wanted to take her on board. They were too busy booking genuine, established talent, like Shirley MacLaine, and of course the late and brilliant Dame Maggie Smith. You get the picture. The hypocrisy is stunning. But this is Harry deluded. He seemingly thinks he can make jokes on this level, and people should just go, "Oh, you're so funny, Harry." No, people are just thinking, "Why are you saying this? You look stupid." This is the new route he's gone down. Appearing on Stephen Colbert, doing memes, mocking his entire background, his entire heritage. Whatever he thinks, this is not going to play out well moving forward. This behavior, this open, almost desperate attempt to be a Hollywood comedian, is what has led us to this latest and most serious confrontation with his elder brother. This is where the story gets really interesting, because as I told you recently, the major networks, CBS, Netflix, Hulu, are very keen to lock down Harry with regards to a documentary for his late mother. They are looking to honor her sad passing in 1997. And for many of us who were around at that period, it was a moment that you never forget. It was the Kennedy moment for our generation, wasn't it? It was a deeply ingrained, collective moment of grief. But for Harry, it's becoming a business opportunity. He has decided that it would be a good time to look at his late mother's legacy, and he hasn't decided of which route he's going to go down yet. But here is the big problem for Harry. The reason this money plot is failing is simple. Not many credible people want to come forward and talk to Harry. Why? Because they don't want to offend the Prince of Wales, William, and naturally, the Princess of Wales, Catherine. They are very much loved over here and around the Commonwealth. Harry is really structured around for people that he feels that he can do, you know, who he could do the story with, but who will come forward. It's all very well having B-list celebrities come on saying, "Oh, well, you know, they did this," or "I remember," but that's not enough substance for a serious, respected documentary. The network knows it, and Harry is scrambling to find a path. But unknown to him, William has already laid the trap. So, we've established the background. Harry's desperate need for a marketable project, and his clear willingness to use his mother's story to secure a massive financial deal. This leads us directly to the Diana documentary plot, which is the crux of the issue. As you know, if you want a documentary about Princess Diana, you need access, you need credibility, and most importantly, you need the right people to speak. And here's the catch for Harry. The people who genuinely loved and respected Diana, the people who have the real stories, are still very much tied to the monarchy, and they are fiercely loyal to Prince William. They are not going to risk their standing for a Netflix special, especially one produced by someone they perceive as exploiting her memory. Prince William has been quietly observing all of this. He's not the impulsive one. He is the methodical, strategic player. He knows that silence can often be mistaken for weakness, but in this case, his silence has been strategic. It has allowed Harry to overplay his hand, to expose his own greed and desperation. And now, the time for subtle hints and private reprimands is over. I've been told from an excellent source close to the royal household that William has been advised by a team of highly respected legal counsel. This is not just a family spat anymore. This is a legal and contractual battle for the very control of the narrative surrounding his mother. The central asset in this documentary war is the trove of shared images, the home videos, the unseen private moments that both brothers own, or at least share the rights to. These are the moments the networks truly want, the childhood memories, the footage of a young Diana as a mother, the private life that has never been fully exposed. This is the nuclear fuel for any documentary deal, and this is where William steps up as the gatekeeper. My sources indicate that William has moved swiftly and decisively to control the use of all shared or jointly owned private archive footage and photographs. This is a legal maneuver, a legal trap, if you will, that effectively kills Harry's ability to produce a commercially viable documentary. Think about it. Without the intimate, never-before-seen footage, Harry's documentary is reduced to a compilation of public clips and talking heads, the same tired narrative that has been done 1,000 times before. It lacks the explosive, exclusive quality that Netflix or any major network would pay millions for. William knows that he doesn't need to attack Harry publicly. He doesn't need to release a statement. He simply needs to use his legal right to protect the intellectual property, the legacy of his mother. And by doing so, he has essentially cut off the financial lifeline that Harry was so desperately clinging to. It's a silent, professional, and devastating slapdown that Harry can't even publicly complain about, because William is simply asserting his rights as the elder son and future king. This move forces Harry back to the drawing board with zero access to the premium assets. It proves that when it comes to the things that truly matter, the legacy and the archives, the real power still resides at Kensington Palace. Let's delve deeper into this legal trap, because this is the specific maneuver that has, according to my sources, brought Harry's multi-million-dollar documentary dreams crashing down. The public narrative is often about emotions and family conflict, but behind the scenes, the royal family operates on a foundation of legal control and intellectual property rights. Prince William understands this far better than his younger brother, who has seemingly neglected his professional team in favor of Hollywood ambition. The key distinction here is between public domain material and private family archives. Anyone can make a documentary using public domain footage, news reports, official tours, public appearances of Diana, but those are generic. They don't generate the explosive buzz and the immense viewing figures that networks are willing to pay for. What CBS or Netflix truly wants are the shared childhood moments, the holiday photos, the intimate family films, the unique, copyrighted material that only the two sons control. Here is William's masterstroke. He is exercising his rights, likely through the legal trusts and executors who oversee their mother's estate and shared property, to explicitly forbid the use of any imagery or footage that features him, Catherine, or their children, and any footage that is deemed to exploit Diana's image without what he considers to be sufficient dignity and respect. This is a devastating blow, because almost every piece of powerful, emotive, exclusive private footage of Diana with her sons will naturally feature both William and Harry. By blocking the use of images featuring William, he effectively renders those shared, high-value clips unusable for Harry's project. It's not a full ban on Harry using his mother's name. It's a technical, targeted ban on the assets that hold the most commercial and emotional value. Without those images and that footage, Harry's documentary instantly loses its exclusivity, its appeal, and frankly, its massive price tag. The networks are smart. They want guaranteed viewership. If Harry comes to the table now with a pitch that relies solely on his own narration and public clips, the networks will walk away. They will tell him, "We need the premium assets, and if your brother is blocking them, then we can't proceed with the deal we discussed." This move forces Harry into a corner where he cannot deliver on the central promise of his documentary. This shows a level of cold, strategic ruthlessness from William that we haven't seen before. It demonstrates that when William draws a line, especially one concerning the protection of his mother's memory, he has the power, the legal counsel, and the institutional backing to enforce it. Harry, who thought he was free from the constraints of the palace, is now realizing that the ultimate control over his most valuable commodity, his past, still belongs to the future king. Let's talk about the cold, hard reality of what this legal move means for Prince Harry's brand building and, more importantly, his bank account. When Harry and Meghan left the UK, they sought financial independence. Their entire business model, the Netflix deals, the book deals, the podcasts, all hinge on one core asset: their unique, exclusive perspective as former senior working royals. They are selling the insider's story, the truth from the other side. But the most valuable part of that story, the part that generates massive contracts, is tied up in the deepest, most sensitive personal history, the story of Princess Diana. This is the emotional goldmine that the networks are willing to gamble millions on. They want the son of Diana to tell her story with new footage, new insights, and a raw emotional angle. Now, William has effectively turned that gold mine into a protected reserve. By asserting control over the shared intellectual property, he has introduced what is known in business as a zero-access problem for Harry. Harry can talk about Diana all he wants in his memoir or on a podcast, but when it comes to a high-production, high-value visual documentary, he needs those images. He needs the backing of the family archives to give it legitimacy and weight. Without William's sign-off, those high-value contracts dry up immediately. Think about the network's perspective. They are not going to sink tens of millions of dollars into a project that is legally contentious and lacks the premium, exclusive visual content. They face the risk of expensive lawsuits from Kensington Palace, and they also risk alienating Prince William, the future king, who is a much more valuable long-term contact for any reputable media organization. This is why William's action is so devastating. It bypasses the need for public drama. He didn't need to issue a fiery statement to the press. He just had to send a notice from his legal team, confirming that access to certain copyrighted material that Harry desperately needs to fulfill his contract, is denied or requires approval that will never be granted. It's a strategic checkmate. Harry's defiance and his decision to publicly mock the very institution that raised him have now come back to haunt him in the most professional and financial way possible. He cannot simply walk away from the royal family and then expect to freely exploit their most cherished private assets. William has drawn a line in the sand. You can criticize the institution, but you cannot profit from desecrating the dignity of our mother. This move sends a powerful message, not just to Harry, but to every network and publisher out there. The true power, the guardianship of the royal narrative, resides with the Prince of Wales. Any deal involving Diana's personal life must now, de facto, go through William's legal representatives, not through the Sussex's commercial agents. We must address the strategic pivot from Kensington Palace. For years, Prince William maintained a stately, often painful silence regarding his brother's increasingly hostile public actions. This was seen by some as noble, a choice to keep the family dignity intact. But in the high-stakes world of Hollywood contracts and multi-million-dollar deals, silence is often interpreted as consent, or at least a lack of resistance. The game changed when the idea of a Diana documentary, heavily leveraging Harry's traumatic memories, became a concrete commercial plan. This was the red line. It went beyond attacking the crown. It was actively monetizing the most sacred and tragic element of William's private life, his mother's memory. My sources confirm that the legal advice William received was blunt and decisive. Continued silence on intellectual property rights would be seen as relinquishing control. They advised him that the time for emotional restraint was over, and that the only language Hollywood and Harry's commercial agents understand is the language of contracts and copyright law. This is why William didn't issue a personal statement full of sorrow or anger. He issued a legal mandate. It's a move that is far more powerful and far less likely to backfire. If William had gone public with a personal plea, Harry's team would have spun it as emotional manipulation and an attempt to silence him. But a legal notice asserting the rightful ownership and control over private archives? That is unassailable. The advice was simple. Use the institutional power you possess to protect the non-institutional memory. William is the Prince of Wales, but in this matter, he acted as the elder son and the co-executor of his mother's most precious assets, the personal footage. This is a battle fought on the legal grounds of copyright, ownership, and dignity, not on the pages of a tabloid. Furthermore, this legal action sends a clear signal to anyone considering a collaboration with the Sussexes that involves the sensitive, shared history of the princes. It acts as a major disincentive, a financial deterrent, for any reputable network. They know that proceeding with a legally challenged project is a recipe for a public relations disaster and potentially ruinous litigation. This final strike proves that William has learned a crucial lesson from the last few years. You cannot fight a commercial war with emotional appeals. You fight it with legal barriers. And by setting this legal trap, he has not only killed the Diana documentary dream, but has potentially set a long-term precedent that severely limits Harry's ability to use their shared past for personal gain in any future mega-deal. Now, you might be asking, why can't Prince Harry simply challenge this? Why can't he release a statement saying, "My brother is trying to silence me and block me from honoring my mother's memory"? The answer is simple, and it lies entirely in the optics, the lack of credibility he has built for himself, and the brilliance of William's legal maneuver. If Harry challenges this block publicly, he has to admit several things. First, he has to admit that he needs William's approval for the high-value assets, the intimate, shared family memories, which instantly undermines his whole financially independent narrative. Secondly, he has to admit that his documentary deal is now in serious jeopardy due to the lack of these visuals, exposing his desperation to monetize his mother. Remember the core accusation this whole story is built on. Harry is exploiting Diana for money. If he fights William's move to protect Diana's dignity, Harry simply validates the public perception that he is indeed the profiteer. He cannot win a public relations battle when the opposing side is literally fighting for the sanctity of the deceased. William has framed this perfectly. His legal team doesn't have to argue that Harry is a bad person. They just have to argue that the usage proposed is not in line with the dignity and respect required for Princess Diana's memory, particularly when the proposed project is tied to a massive personal financial gain. This is an unassailable moral high ground. Furthermore, Harry's credibility has been severely damaged by his previous public exploits, especially the release of Spare. The royal family can easily point to the deeply private, often highly unflattering details Harry chose to share in his memoir as evidence that he cannot be trusted with the sensitive, private archives of Princess Diana. They can argue in any private legal forum that Harry has demonstrated a clear intent to prioritize commercial success and sensationalism over the respect and privacy of the family, including his late mother. This is the fatal mistake hinted at in our title. Harry's previous actions have provided William with the perfect legal and moral ammunition to stop him now. The only way for Harry to fight back would be an explosive, expensive, and protracted legal battle that would further drain his resources and alienate the last few allies he has left in the media and publishing world. For Harry, remaining silent on this legal setback is actually the lesser of two evils, which means William's final strike has effectively neutralized him. The ripple effect of this legal intervention extends far beyond Kensington Palace and Montecito. This is not just a family feud. It is a profound institutional statement directed squarely at the powerful media behemoths of Hollywood, Netflix, Spotify, and major U.S. networks. When Harry and Meghan signed their massive deals, the networks were betting on their access, their exclusivity, and their willingness to deliver the kind of explosive, private royal content that no one else could. That content, ultimately, meant a heavy reliance on the most sensitive archives, the images of Diana, the shared childhood footage, the moments only the sons possess. William's legal move acts as a giant, neon sign flashing liability over any project pitched by the Sussexes that touches this core subject. The message to Netflix is simple. You can buy Harry's story, but you cannot buy Diana's most precious and private visual assets. Why is this so critical? Because these major streamers operate on a risk assessment model. They calculate the potential viewership versus the cost and the legal exposure. A lawsuit involving the Prince of Wales, the future king, over the dignity of Princess Diana's memory is not a risk any reputable, publicly traded company wants to take. It is a guaranteed public relations nightmare and an almost certain loss of access to the palace for all other future projects. This effectively devalues Harry's pitch. He can no longer promise the exclusive Diana footage that was the multi-million-dollar hook. He is now forced to sell a much less valuable product, a talking head documentary about Diana using common newsreel clips and his own, often criticized, emotionally charged narration. That just isn't worth the massive upfront investment these networks initially agreed to. This move by William is a brilliant example of using institutional power to fight commercial exploitation. It elevates the Prince of Wales from a sympathetic victim of his brother's drama to a powerful legal figure protecting his mother's legacy with surgical precision. It shows the networks that while they may have the money, the palace holds the ultimate control over the most valuable, intangible asset, the narrative of the crown. In the world of high finance and media deals, reputation is everything, and William, by this single legal action, has successfully branded any Sussex-led Diana project as legally risky and morally dubious. This makes the networks pause, forcing Harry's team to scramble and potentially renegotiate, or worse, abandon the project entirely. The most fascinating long-term consequence of William's legal maneuver is what it reveals about the royal family's new post-Sussex media strategy. For decades, The palace's approach to media crises, especially those involving sensitive family matters, was based on the old mantra, "Never complain, never explain." That era is now officially over. William and the new cohort of courtiers around him have realized that dealing with Harry and Meghan requires an entirely different kind of warfare, one that prioritizes legal protection and strategic preemptive strikes over passive silence. This move signals a fundamental shift. The monarchy will no longer allow the dignity of the institution or its key members to be compromised for the sake of somebody else's commercial gain. They are choosing dignity over dollars. By killing the Diana documentary plot, William is sacrificing a potential public relations win that Harry might have created in favor of asserting the sanctity of his mother's memory and the family's control over its own narrative. This is a very powerful, moral statement in an age of constant commercial exploitation. Furthermore, this action re-establishes a boundary that Harry constantly sought to obliterate. He wanted the privileges of royalty, the titles, the stories, the heritage, without the constraints and responsibilities. William has used the very structure of the institution to reimpose those constraints, proving that the palace machine still holds the ultimate veto power over what is deemed acceptable for public consumption. This sets a precedent for how the palace will handle any future attempts by the Sussexes to monetize their most sensitive ties to the royal family. Any future book deal, any podcast episode, any public speech that veers too close to confidential, private, or jointly owned information will now be viewed through the lens of this legal trap. Harry's team will have to be far more cautious, far less sensational, and far less effective in securing those massive, lucrative deals. The quiet message being delivered to the global media is this: if you align with the Sussexes on material that compromises the royal family's dignity, you are aligning against the future king. And in the long run, that is a business relationship no major network can afford to sacrifice. William's final strike ensures that the Sussex brand will be permanently tainted by the lack of credible, exclusive access they can provide, ultimately forcing them to rely on less explosive, less profitable content. We've reached the end game of this particular crisis, and the results are clear. Prince William's strategic legal trap has achieved what years of public silence and subtle resistance could not. It has neutralized Harry's most commercially explosive project, the Diana documentary. This is more than just a win for William. It's a long-term victory for the dignity of the royal family's archives and, crucially, for the memory of Princess Diana. William has asserted the role of the elder son and future king, not through emotional pleas, but through the cold, hard reality of legal governance. Harry, who chose to trade in the world of high-stakes Hollywood contracts, has been defeated by a superior professional strategy. He went up against the institution and lost control over his most valuable asset, his shared past. His attempts to leverage his mother's tragedy for a multi-million-dollar paycheck have been thwarted by the legal clarity and moral high ground held by the Prince of Wales. The ultimate irony here is that by seeking total freedom and financial independence from the monarchy, Harry has discovered that his freedom is still heavily restricted by the assets he shares with the crown. The money, as we noted earlier, truly is with Prince William when it comes to the legacy that matters most. Harry's path now is one of severe limitation, forcing him to rely on generic projects that lack the explosive, exclusive appeal he once promised his partners. This whole saga confirms the royal family's new approach. They will no longer passively absorb the damage. When a line is crossed, specifically when it involves exploiting the memory of Diana, they will retaliate with legal force, precision, and zero tolerance. This move ensures that the Sussex brand is now permanently defined by its lack of genuine, high-value access, making future deals significantly harder to secure. The message to you, our loyal viewers, is that while the drama continues, pay attention to the legal and strategic moves, not just the emotional outbursts. William has successfully safeguarded his mother's honor and protected the family's narrative from further commercialization. Thank you so much for joining me today. I want to know what you think. Do you believe William was right to use a legal block to stop Harry's documentary plan? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the truth behind the crown. Until next time, take care.